we have here a number 4 Mark I Lee Enfield. Now we've made some obvious progressions along the way. We're into the smokeless era, and we talked a little bit in the previous segment around black powder, and black powder is essentially a physical aggregate explosive in terms of its mixture. And through the late 1800s, there was a lot of development on the formation of nitrocottons, essentially, cotton that was soaked in nitric acid. It allowed it to be nitrated and essentially formed the foundation, the single base of single-base smokeless propellants. In addition to it now, you've seen the progression of the rifling and the sights and the quality of it, and the contained cartridges that we saw of years past. Now, this one, Gary, again has a little bit of a Canadian connection.
Yes, this is a bolt-action repeating firearm, 10-round detachable box magazine. The Germans in World War II were using a 5-round integral magazine, so the Canadians and the British had a bit of an advantage. The Lee Enfield action is much quicker to operate than the Mauser, but what it is you open, pull back. You would take a stripper clip of cartridges and you would insert it from the top and ram them in, and you do 2 of those. Close the bolt. This action, the Lee Enfield action, closes, it cocks the action on closing. Hence, when you do that, it's a much quicker action than the Mauser. So the British had a number of advantages in their bolt action rifle. This is what the cartridges look like. These are drill rounds. They are absolutely inert. It's just so you can see what the soldier would be carrying. These are Canadian manufactured at Long Branch, and they made about 1 million of them. And they took a spike bayonet. You'll notice quite a bit of difference between the 1800s bayonet and the 1940s bayonet. They never really got too close. Mostly for guard duty, they would use the bayonet.
Now, the interesting thing is, as Gary was talking about the actions. So the Lee Enfield is a cock to close. The K98, the Mauser, the Springfield 1903, which was essentially based on the German, was a cock to open. And as Gary said, it allowed for a very easy opening action in feeding. They were very rapid. There actually were some time trials that were done in the past. There's called the Mad Minute, where these could be fired at a very high cyclic rate. And the interesting piece of the design too as well is that the locking of the action is all at the rear of the receiver. Many of the other ones have lugs that lock into the front. And one of the advantages that this had was because everything was open and exposed, it lent well to performing in adverse elements, because you didn't have dirt, grime, unburnt powder being built up into the actual action itself. As well, you can see that we're still hanging on to the concept of volley fire. These sights are actually marked to go out to 300 meters or 1,300 meters. Yep. During World War I, the Lee Enfields of that time actually went out beyond 2,000. The whole idea being that you could have indirect fire, concentrated fire at the enemy. While this still preserves it to some extent, it's only going out to about 1,300 meters. Yeah. Where really they were looking at the engagements that they learned through Europe through the Great War and into the Second War. So a battle site, really for a closer engagement, and then a graduated that worked its way up and down to allow them to fire it.
Yes. This particular gun was made in Long Branch in 1945. And they were made until the mid-1950s, basically, for Canadian use. A very reliable firearm, weighed about 9.5 pounds. And it could go through pretty near anything, and it did, from Arctic conditions to the desert, wet, sleet, hail. It pretty much functions all the time.
And really had been an issue for many years following that. including,
Absolutely.
I believe, with the Canadian Rangers up until just recently.
Yes.
So you've had an opportunity to take a look at the Lee Enfield Long Branch Canadian foray into the bolt action rifle during the Second World War.